Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Mike Preuss, founder and CEO of Visible. Mike, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate you taking the time.
So why don't we start with a quick elevator pitch for Visible? What do you guys do?
Yeah, Visible is a tool that helps privately held companies report data to their investors and provide qualitative updates alongside that data.
What does that actually look like? Can you maybe go into a little bit more detail in what the application does?
Yeah, so Visible really is broken into a couple core parts of the experience. The first are what we call updates. Really, when you think of an update, it's a text document that has rich text that you can put into it. But in addition to that rich text, you have what we call charts or data visualizations. So you can build really beautiful looking traction charts and KPI charts and all different types of visualizations that you can use to tell the story of that data. And to help automate that, we integrate with a suite of different services that companies use to run their business. So think, QuickBooks or Xero for accounting and finance. We integrate with Salesforce and HubSpot for CRM data, Google Analytics and Mixpanel maybe for your web-based or event-driven data, and help automate that entire process. So really what we're doing is taking data from all these disparate systems that you're using to run your business, putting that in one central place where then companies can visualize that data, put it into updates that I mentioned, and then send that out to their investors. And one of the things that we think is pretty unique about Visible, or at least one of our product principles, is that anything that you can build within Visible can be rendered directly in the email inbox of whoever's receiving it. What we see is that people don't want yet another application to manage or have to sign into. Just give it to me where I'm already at. And, for 99% of people, that's email.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
For someone who's listening, can you provide any sort of vanity metrics or traction metrics around where you guys are at on the journey? That could be number of companies using Visible, that could be revenue, fundraising, anything you're open to sharing.
Yeah. So we have over 2,000 companies that are using Visible to report data to their investors. And those are all, paying customers. And it widely ranges in terms of what people are paying. When we first started out, we were charging $19 a month, and we've grandfathered people into that pricing plan. And, some people are paying us $200 a month. But for the most part, all of our customers are companies that have some sort of stakeholder attached to them, whether that's, an investor, a potential investor, maybe an angel investor that are getting these updates. But yeah, we have 2,000 of them all across the globe. So one of the things I think is really cool about Visible is that we have customers on every continent, minus Antarctica, but we're trying to find someone that we can get a customer there so we can say, hey, we have one. But we have customers all across the globe. So it's a problem that's not, just specific to, the Valley or San Francisco. It's a kind of a global problem. We certainly didn't intend that as a strategy, but it's kind of just naturally happened as we've built the company.
All right. That's it for my canned questions. Now I get to ask fun questions. So I'm super intrigued at the network effect that comes out of a product like this. How often do you see an investor who gets invited to Visible in one of their investments, then come back and be like, holy crap, I need every one of my startups to be in this platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm really embarrassed to say that I don't know. And you think we would, knowing that we track data and we kind of think this is our core competency. I would say 20 to 30%. So here, at least a third of our customers are coming word of mouth or through a product referral. That we do know. What we're trying to get better at is actually understanding how people are coming into our funnel. So literally before I joined this podcast, one of our team members, Matt, sent me a note saying, hey, this is kind of cool. This company just signed up because they were receiving an update. So this company was an angel. He was the CEO is an angel investor. He's getting updates from one of our customers, and he just created a trial on Visible himself. And so that's the virality you're speaking to. In terms of having really good data, I wish we did, and it's something that we're literally trying to figure out right now. But yeah, you can imagine that there's all these really interesting stories of the virality of the product. Just another anecdote, we have a set of accelerators in the Middle East using Visible for all their portfolio companies. And one of those portfolio companies was sending updates out to investors. A gentleman who happened to be in Egypt, and he is starting a company that is helping individuals get access to banking in Yemen because there's a big war going on there. And so he wants to be able to send updates out to like UNICEF and these other organizations that are funding that project. So there's all kinds of really cool little viral stories about how people come into our world. I just don't have a great sense for the hard data yet. Maybe next time we talk, I do.
Dude, those are some awesome little snippets of how it's used. That's great.
Yeah.
So that kind of actually begs the question, which is normally one of my leading questions in a competition, because there were a couple of different use cases in there. So when you think of competitors in the space for Visible, like who comes to mind? Because it was more like, especially with the example of funders for I'm blanking on the war that you said, but basically funding organizations for the person who's helping getting small loans. Is that right?
Yep.
How common is that where you find out that somebody is using the platform? It's not like that's wrong, but it's certainly not what you thought you were building.
Yeah.
How common is that?
I would say, 50% of our customers are straight up using Visible to report data to investors. That we do know.
Okay.
And then the other 50% is a mixture. Certainly some of those are still doing investor reporting, but some might be sending a weekly team note to everyone in the company. Some might be sending it to their clients. So we have a lot of accounting and finance firms that are using Visible, getting data out of QuickBooks and sending it to their clients as a report that they can use for their own reporting. So that's not necessarily in, the use case of investor reporting, but certainly one that's been adopted. We have a company that is a purveyor of honey in New Zealand that's using Visible for their management team. There's certainly wide use cases. And I think that's, in terms of competitors, to answer your first question, that kind of spans really the gamut, right? So in the kind of visualizing data and producing reports, you could argue that we are a BI tool. And there's folks like Grow and Domo and Clipfolio and Geckoboard and Google Data Studio and QuickSight BS or QuickSight, I can't remember, AWS, Amazon's product. So there's a suite of BI tools out there, and we can be considered competitive with them. On the productivity side, there's Microsoft Office, and that has Excel and PowerPoint and those tools. Google's got their own set of tools, and there's email, and there's MailChimp, and there's all these other kind of tools that, if you piece them together, could do what Visible does. And then even in the VC startup space, there's all other tools too. There's direct competitors to ours, Founder Suite being one. There's Carta, Gust, AngelList. These are all people that maybe do a part of what we do or are thinking about doing something with you. And those are in kind of our direct kind of vertical. And, as we think about how do we message or market against that, we had a team member, Andrew, who joined in the fall. And, if you looked at our marketing and messaging a year ago, is kind of Visible could be used for all of these different use cases that I just mentioned. And we've actually really kind of narrowed our focus in. Like we want, seed to Series A companies using Visible to report data to their investors. Like that's where we think we have the best chance to win, get traction. And if someone comes to Visible and starts using it in a different way, that's totally fine. But we're not necessarily going to market to that use case because there's a lot of competition out there. A lot of the BI tools are getting priced to like free. Like a lot of people are giving those tools away for free now to get you part of their ecosystem. And so we want to be really careful in terms of how we think about our positioning. And we believe we have the best chance to win in the kind of investor VC reporting space.
Seed to Series A. I like that. How often when you get a seed company on board, how much of your project is educational versus they come in and they already know what to share with investors, right? So obviously if they're a serial entrepreneur, they probably have some idea of what an investor is looking for, but I'm thinking of, well, partly myself, back when I was first time at this, but then also other people that I get to work with in some of my other roles, like they have no idea what to do. And part of when I was playing around with Visible, part of the attraction was like, well, some of it is like you're leading the witness, right? Like, hey, if you're not reporting on sales data, maybe you should be because we integrate with HubSpot, right? Like, so like you're kind of leading them down that path. But then how much of that is like, are they reaching out to you guys saying like, hey, what do I put here? Like, what is the kind of thing my investor would want to see?
Yeah, we have a lot of that where that is, starting a company and getting investors for that company. That's a pretty new, just like concept in general. I mean, venture capital, yes, is decades old, but there's never been more capital in the ecosystem than ever. More companies are being started than ever, and so a lot of people don't know how to report to investors or what to include and what are best practices for that. So we do have a good amount of people coming into Visible saying, hey, what should I report? And this is something that I think we do a pretty good job on the content side of things in terms of writing really interesting pieces about what you should be including. Our top content for last year, I think our top 5 posts were all some sort of template. And we really lack on the product side, to be honest, in terms of being able to kind of lead and coach and prescribe. And so hopefully by the time this podcast airs, Visible will actually have templates in it. So that's something that we're working on as we speak and should be wrapped up soon, where a company can come in and say, hey, I'm a SaaS company. I am this size. What should I be reporting to my investors? And, it might seem obvious, but, it's like, hey, they're going to care about burn, headcount. What is total ARR growth? What is your churn as percent of customers, churn is percent of ARR. How much is my sales and marketing spend? What's my customer acquisition cost? So, there's a lot of opportunity for us to take the platform that we've built and start actually getting a little bit more prescriptive in terms of how we can help companies. Because right now it's completely kind of a blank slate and completely customizable, which is great because we can say yes to a lot of things when people ask us if we can do that. Right. But in terms of a initial experience, if you're a first-time founder, it might be pretty daunting. So that's the one thing that we're changing right now is how do we get the time to value for our customers, to be quick? Because what we do see is like when someone comes in and knows kind of what they're doing, like we have people convert in 12 hours to be a customer for a year. That's not uncommon. But we also see like customers that come in, they want to use Visible, but they're like, what do I report? So we got to set a call, maybe set another demo, build a template for them. And that, entire time from trial to buy might take 90 days. So it kind of just depends on how well the company understands what they want to do. And that's a big opportunity for us to bring some of that into the product. And I think maybe the reason why we weren't doing that before is because we were trying to build the tool that kind of solved all these different use cases. And now that we've really kind of honed in on startups reporting data to investors, we can be a lot more prescriptive in the product itself in terms of what you might want to track and share.
So when you're developing that product roadmap, so I know you guys are like in the middle of it right now with templates and some other stuff that you're working on. But as you play that out over the next couple of years, because you've decided to focus on startups reporting to investors, seed to Series A, how are you figuring out what are those? Like I'd love, and your answer might be you don't know, and it might be we have these awesome processes that we follow. But like, how do you and the team decide what are the features? Like, how much of that is looking at competitors in the space versus talking to founders and finding an unmet need versus any other thing you guys might be doing?
Yeah, I think a third is what is the market saying, right? So what are competitors doing? Where's the market going? What's happening there? So a third is being dictated by the market, I guess at a macro level. A third being dictated by what are our current customers saying to us? Like, what are they saying they need? How can we make the experience better for them? And what's interesting is, now that we've been around for 4 years, we've seen companies on Visible go through multiple rounds of financing. And those needs may change over time. And so we're just getting a lot of interesting data there. And then a third being like, what are potential, customers saying or users, and maybe they're not buying or adopting Visible because of X, Y, Z reason. And so we're going to take all those data points together and develop our roadmap and what we want to focus on. And so to answer that question a little bit deeper, I guess, I think templates are a good example of here's what potential users or customers are saying. They're saying, hey, I want to use Visible. I just don't know how to use it. And so that's a decision that was driven by a lot of customers. In terms of some other things that maybe you've heard from customers of the market is, if you think about getting investors or financing your business, it's really no different than like a sales and marketing function that you might be running for your product, right? You have kind of at the top of the funnel, you might have just awareness. And then below that, you might be identifying and prospecting accounts, get them into some sort of sales process and funnel, and then you close them as a customer. And then that gets handed off to the customer success function, where their job is to delight, retain, and maybe even expand that account. And when you think about that for a company and their investment, it's really no different, right? I need to identify, prospect, and drive awareness for my company to investors. From there, some percentages of them will kind of fit my ideal customer profile, and I'm going to want to engage with them on talking more about my business and getting into some sort of maybe deal with them. And then from there, they're going to write a check and be an investor in my business. And I think Visible right now is well situated as like a customer success tool, right? It's like, how are we engaging and retaining and upselling your customers, your investors? But I think you might start to see us move up the funnel in terms of product functionality and what you can expect from Visible, because we want to be a tool that's used for all different parts of the fundraising life cycle as a company. We've seen our customers have raised $600 million in follow-on funding in the last 12 months, which I think is really cool. We were just looking at that data and pulled it all down and said, great, from when a customer joined Visible to now, how much funding have they raised? And it's over $600 million. And, you can argue causation versus correlation, but really what that means is like, hey, investors and companies that are reporting data to investors are much more likely to get follow-on funding, are much more likely to have successful future raises. And we want to make sure that we build tools that keep that in mind too.
Awesome. I'm gonna pop the stack a little bit and go back to an early part of that answer. So when you're looking at competitors in the space, how do you guys do that? Do you just have a product owner whose job it is to be on top of those products and look at what they're announcing and look at new features that come out? Are you tracking that stuff in a spreadsheet, in a tool somewhere? I'd love, like, tactically, what's your process for staying on top of what other people are doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And my answer is probably no different than a lot of people that start a process early, which is like, it's in a Google Sheet. Like, we have a Google Sheet, it's got competitors in there, and it's got some information about them. We might have Google Alerts set up. We might be following their blog and web traffic in a SEO type tool, but it's not terribly sophisticated. As we mature as a company, I'm sure there's probably a tool or something that we would want to use to track those. But right now, it's primarily like a piecemeal solution of spreadsheets and a couple other tools that we're using just to monitor what our competitors are doing.
Don't feel bad. I ask that question to everybody, and that's everybody's answer. There's no tool out there. You're all good. So, okay, then switch back over to the customer side. When you're talking to existing customers or maybe trial users who don't convert and you're getting their feedback, like, do you have any heuristics for how you manage the outliers versus, no, this is really the voice of the customer. We've heard this for like the 50th time. This is a real thing. We got to do this. Like, what are some of those thresholds for you and the team as you reflect on some of that feedback?
Yeah, one of the things that we're starting to do is, we kind of have the mission and the values of the company that we're kind of updating and standardizing right now. So what we believe in as a product and company, we have our quarterly goals in terms of here's where we want to be and think what success looks like at the end of the quarter. And then we kind of have our where do we want to be at the end of the year. And when we're talking to current customers, so kind of real example, one of our things we mentioned or that I mentioned is time to value. So how do we get a customer getting value more in Visible quicker? And that's what this whole last quarter was about, which is reducing that. And so what we did and looked at is we talked to customers and we said, what's the part about Visible you love the most that you couldn't live without, and how are you using that? And what we saw for a lot of those, if not all the customers, and they're saying, hey, I love part of our product is called updates. Like I love updates, and that's why I'm a huge fan of Visible. Well, updates are actually kind of like buried in the UI a little bit and might take a couple clicks to get there. And so we're updating just a complete experience to be more update driven than other different parts of the application. So that kind of inferred that product decision. And then in terms of some other, things, templates being a big one. So what do I report on? So potential customers are saying, hey, I'm a hardware company. I'm in Colorado. What should I be tracking and sharing with investors? And that might be very different than a SaaS company, but like we have an opportunity to delight that customer and get value for them right away through some sort of template. And so that's why we're building templates. So we kind of take all the different data points, the voice of the customer, the voice of the potential customer, and we kind of run that through our own framework of goals and what's our mission, and kind of, run it through our own models and be like, yep, that makes sense. Or like, hey, this is kind of outside the strike zone for what we want to accomplish. And maybe we put that on the backlog or the icebox or completely discard it. But, if it's usually if someone's saying, hey, this is how I want to engage with an investor, we definitely want to be part of that conversation and understand the nuances and opportunity that we have to build product for that.
At the start of that, you mentioned, there's a theme here, by the way, like the very first thing you say in an answer, apparently, is the thing that I'm going to back you all the way up.
Maybe I should just hit pause after that and not give some rambling answer then.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm not doing this on purpose. I promise. I'm finding the stuff that you're dropping these little bits that I find super interesting. I want to pull on them. So at the start of that, you said you guys are right now in the process of updating your mission and values. Well, two parts. One, why? And then two, I'd love if you could talk at all about the process you're using with your team to do that.
Yeah, we're doing it because I hinted at earlier that, we went through this transformation of our marketing and messaging. And so if we looked at, kind of our mission or what we believed in a year ago, it was, what if everyone could tell the story of their data? ? That was kind of like, we were messing around with this idea of like, having a question be part of our mission or vision. So you can never really accomplish it. And now, we want to update that because it doesn't necessarily reflect how our customers are using Visible, where we see the product going. And so we were literally, it's kind of like something that we haven't started yet and that we will next week in terms of updating these. But, we kind of tease them out in one-on-ones with everyone in the company, talk about it holistically as a group at an offsite and get feedback from everyone. So it's very much like a bottoms-up approach, and also kind of a one-on-one conversation that I like to have with everyone in the organization. I mean, we're 7 people. It's not like we're a big company in terms of headcount. Right. But as we have some ambitious growth goals, and as we bring other people into our team and our culture, we want to make sure those are established. And so, that's why we're updating them now.
I love it. That's great.
This episode is brought to you by Full Stack PEO. Most founders start companies because they figured out a better way to solve a problem or serve a need, not because they love tracking payroll, filling out compliance forms, and explaining employee benefits packages. And yet, all that stuff still has to be done. That's why there's Full Stack PEO. Full Stack PEO specializes in turnkey HR for emerging companies, not just those core services, but advice and expertise that help founders maximize employee potential. Curious? Find out more at fullstackpeo.com.
So you guys are, and I want to test this because I'm assuming this is true, but I've never asked you this. You guys are a marketing-driven organization, right? Not sales-driven. You're getting people to drop on the website and then convert them, or do you do reach out?
That is correct. As of right now, we are 100% inbound as a go-to-market strategy.
Nice. Talk a little bit about that in particular. I'd love to, like, how do you think of cutting through the noise? And when I say noise, I mean like tons of noise, right? Like the entrepreneur right now is like the person that everybody wants to sell to. Mm-hmm. That's not just in SaaS. That's like people want to give them money. People want to give them loans. People like it's a very highly prized market to go after. So how do you cut through that general noise? And then how have you been successful developing a message that converts even in the very specific space that you compete?
Yeah. The way we started our content strategy was, as I started Visible, I had questions I was asking. An investor said, hey, can you put a total addressable market analysis together? And I Googled total addressable market template or analysis, and I couldn't find anything. And I was like, okay. So I built my own and then open sourced that more or less, meaning I just put it a template online. And now chances are if you go type in TAM template or total addressable template, we'll rank number one for that. And so we try to have a very authentic voice and we don't try to sell Visible. We try to sell the idea that all of these companies have hard questions to answer and your time is limited. Like, can we create tools or content that are valuable to the entrepreneur? And then, maybe insert ourselves into that conversation somewhere down the line. And so things that perform really well for us are templates. So that TAM template I mentioned. Last week I was going through, I was like, I wonder what our cohort retention is now that we have a couple quarters of data under our belt. And I found some helpful blog posts, but I didn't find like a plug and play template. And so I built a Google Sheet one, and I'm pretty confident that that will be something that's very valuable to customers as well. So we just try to find and make little tools or pieces of content that hopefully will give the entrepreneur a little bit of a leg up and make their life a little bit easier. And then we've done what we call the Founders Forward. So we have a weekly newsletter that gets sent out kind of every Thursday, 4 p.m. Central Time. It goes out. I think we've sent like 100 of these in a row. Back in the fall, we renamed it the Founders Forward, and that's where we want like our hub of all things for founders to be. And that has a completely different brand. So like if you go and look at our blog, it's yellow, it's black, it doesn't resemble our brand really at all. And that's kind of intentional. We wanted that to be a resource for founders and not necessarily to sell Visible. So when you get that email, it doesn't necessarily look like our brand. It's a separate brand. I mean, it says powered by Visible at the bottom, but we just want that to be a newsletter that people look forward to getting every week. A lot of inspiration from that was taken from the Mattermark Daily when that existed, which was an awesome resource that I think everyone loved reading. And so we took that and wanted it to live on. And so we send that out every Thursday. Some other things for content that we do in cutting through the noise, a lot of it is founder referrals too. So, how can we get other founders referring founders to Visible and how do we incentivize them to do that and talk about Visible? We keep testing things. I don't think we've found anything that's like super scalable yet because people refer things to founders in all different ways. But we, do see that coming through like, hey, so-and-so told me about your product and I'm excited to try it out. And so really it kind of just comes down to authenticity and helping them solve problems.
I'm like, while you're talking, I'm looking through some of this content. Actually, I have already opened the fundraise tracking tool, which is
yes.
Good. Cool little tool. While you're talking, I grabbed that because I'm doing a little fundraising right now. So it's very, very timely. Dude, this is excellent content. How do you guys as a team figure out how to come up with what's your content calendar look like? Maybe we'll start there. And how do you guys feed the beast?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person. Andrew and Matt. Andrew and Matt on our team have done just an incredible job of our content and producing high quality content. But to kind of give you a better answer, we'll have like a theme for the month, and we'll build content around that. We usually try to launch one big kind of rock of content and then smaller little ones stemming from that. The fundraise tracking tool. I'm glad you saw that. I completely forgot to mention it. That was something that was like people were like, as a product, we were like, would it be interesting to have a tool to help you track a fundraise and almost like a CRM within Visible? And to answer that question, we're like, well, why don't we just make a Google Sheet template? Because that's how most people start, an idea. They're like, I was using Excel for this, and Excel is not great, so I want to build an application. So we're like, let's just build a prototype, which is the Excel sheet. And if people really like that template, we'll build a product from that. And so I think a lot of times it's, we're talking to customers and founders all the time. They're like, hey, I have a problem with this or a problem with that. And that feeds a lot of the content calendar. But now as we think about the rest of the year, we will have probably a more holistic marketing strategy around what we want to build. But a lot of times it's a founder that comes to us or ourselves and we're like, hey, we have this problem. And then we kind of solve it. And then we just put it on the blog. And that way the founder doesn't have to solve it, and we do it for them, and we put it on the blog. So a lot of it's just driven by our community or things we encounter every day ourselves.
All right. I will do one last quick call out here. If you're listening to this podcast, you need to go check out visible.vc/blog. It is this is fantastic content. And if you're listening to this podcast, this is the content you want to be reading. Seriously, this is really good stuff. All right. I'll move off of that. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's not a paid advertisement.
I'm going to let you plug the blog any day, all day. You let me know. I'll let you talk as much as you want.
I seriously am going to lose a couple of hours this weekend to some of the stuff. This is really good stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
I guess kind of back to the market. So you got customers in every continent.
Yep.
Sorry. Do you guys have that focus on purpose, or that's just how everything fell and where things are shaping up? Or do you purposefully market globally? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think startups as a language is kind of like a global thing, right? Where a lot of the content that's being produced, not by us, but just for startups in general, a lot of it is kind of its own language, and a lot of it's a lot of in English. So it's not like we're internationalizing our content or our application. It's all in English, but that's what a lot of startup content typically is in. And I guess in terms of how that happened, it's one of those kind of viral, I think some of the viral aspects of Visible definitely played a role where, you might have an investor. So like one of our investors is Kima Ventures. They are a French venture fund, and they found out about Visible from one of our customers that was in France. And they probably were a company that had investors in the States and found us that way. So there's kind of like 1 to 2 degrees of separation connecting the global ecosystem in terms of startups. And so it was not intentional that we did that. But some of the stuff is, so I guess we do have a good amount of customers in Australia and New Zealand. And the reason we do is because we integrate with a tool there called Xero. Xero is the same thing as QuickBooks Online, essentially. I mean, they probably hate that I said that, but I mean, it's an online accounting finance tool. And we built an integration with them. That company actually was started and headquartered in New Zealand. And so by nature, everyone there uses that tool. And a customer said, hey, I'll pay you for a year up front if you do X, Y, and Z with this tool. And we were early and we said, absolutely, we did it. We built it. And kind of just self-fulfilling at that point then, right? Because other people find it and they're like, hey, if you do this, I'll buy. And so we keep improving that particular integration that does really well for us. And so by nature of that company being started in that part of the world, we do have a lot of customers, but it's not a strategy for us. We don't have a international strategy yet. Maybe at some point we will. I think we want to get better at winning customers in North America first, and then kind of figure out how we could go and expand it to other big ecosystems across the world.
How successful have app integrations? Because I'm assuming you're in a Xero marketplace and a HubSpot marketplace and a QuickBooks marketplace. How successful has that integration strategy been? Do you see much of your traffic coming from those tools to you?
The short answer is it works okay as a strategy. It's one of those things, what you put into it is probably what you get out of it. And so if you look at HubSpot, for example, we probably could be marketing to the HubSpot ecosystem better, but maybe we're not. Xero, we spend quite some time in. So it is, they certain ones perform really well and certain ones don't. It kind of just depends on the integration and how much effort we put into it. And the other tricky problem when we're marketing our service on an app store of another service is that kind of investor reporting is very specific. It's not like saying, hey, I want to see what CRMs this integrates with. It's like, where does investor reporting fall in Xero's world, right? Is that a BI tool? Is that a reporting tool? Is that we don't necessarily fall under any particular category, which is a challenge, but certain ones do perform well for us. Xero in particular, I know I mentioned that, but they've been a great partner for us.
That's cool. All right. I'm going to move to a couple of more rapid fire questions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. What's the best book you've read in the last couple of months?
Best book I've read, Culture Code. It's awesome, just book about high performing culture. I would highly recommend it. It was recommended to me by someone here in Chicago. Alita, she does awesome work with cultures and companies. She gave it to me as a gift after a meeting I had with her, which I thought was really cool. Like, I want to buy people books after I have meetings with them now.
Oh man, I'm a massive fan of that strategy. Can I actually give you a little hack?
Yes.
So there's and I probably shouldn't disclose this because this is this might come off as a little disingenuous, but please, if you've received a book from me, this is not disingenuous. There's a product out there called MailLift. If you go to maillift.com, and they might hate this endorsement because I believe they would desire to be a bulk mailing platform. But what MailLift does is they do handwritten notes as part of your sales campaign, right? So like you can integrate them with your CRM, and then they'll do a handwritten thank you or something as part of, and you just have them as part of your workflow, right? But they also have, if you log into their website, you can send one letter at a time. So if you wanted to send one little handwritten letter at a time through MailLift, you could. And again, this is the part that they probably don't love because that doesn't really scale. But the hack is you can drop ship things to MailLift, and they will include it in your letter. So you could send them so I just send them books from Amazon. So they probably have like 30 books from Amazon for me right now that I can then say, okay, I just met with this person. I want to send them a copy of, some of my go-tos would be like 0 to 1. If it's a founder who's, just getting started. If it's somebody who's juggling too many tasks, it might be the book Essentialism. If it's, at different stages of the journey, I have like different books that I might send. So then you just type in the note you want to send and you put the book on it and you just click go. And then, 5 days later, that person gets a handwritten note with a book. Freaking awesome.
Do they actually handwrite it, or is it like a machine handwriting it?
No. So seriously, they handwrite it. It is pretty awesome. And they'll even give you a photo. Like I can log in and click view on the thing that gets sent out, and you get to see the photo of the handwritten note next to the book. And so from a quality control perspective, it's really cool. And please, again, if you've gotten one of these from me, this is not disingenuous. It's just a way to save time. I really do mean what I write in the note, like, because I'm trying to make it a thoughtful, personal note. But it's a huge time saver.
I'm going to totally steal that. I love that. I'm on their site right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, well, good. That was an awesome digression. What was the name of that book again? Real quick.
Culture Code.
Culture Code. Awesome. All right. What is the thing that you're most excited about personally this year at getting better at?
That's a great question. Personally, getting better at listening for me. So I have the personality where I tend to want information faster or might interrupt. And I just want to be a better listener in general. It was one of my things that I wanted to improve in 2018, which I certainly did. And I think it's incredibly important and I want to improve it in 2019 as well.
Any insights into how you got better in 2018? Any tips for things that you tried that worked?
It's kind of, for me, it was, if I found myself wanting to jump in, I would just have to be like, nope, don't do it. And it was more just like breaking a habit. So maybe I should have asked people what they do, but for me, it was kind of just like mind over matter and just getting better at, don't jump in right away. It'll probably get discussed anyways. And so for me, it was just really being kind of conscious of when I'm talking versus others. So it was just more kind of being in tune with how I actually communicate.
That's awesome. That's a good goal. I like it.
Thanks.
All right, Mike. I really appreciate you taking the time. If people would like to connect with you and learn more, where can they do that?
Yeah, they can just email me. It's mike@visible.vc. So they're happy to email me there. Twitter as well. It's just Mike Preuss. So either of those, would love to chat.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.